I'm really excited that I get to do this again this week. Last week was the first trial, and I didn't really know what I was getting into. Like everything else is a learning curve, right? But so this is the second edition of what I'm calling Dimensional Twist, and it's just casual conversation between friends, getting people to talk about things that really interest them, that they're passionate about, and hopefully other people can learn from that, or just know that there are other people out there that they can relate to that maybe have similar interests, or maybe they don't have anybody to talk to. And so these conversations are happening anyway between us, but we thought it would be nice to just kind of open the doors and allow other people to see what conversations are taking place. And so we have something different planned for every week. Set theme. We really just kind of go with the flow and see where we end up. And hopefully we have some really interesting conversations along the way. But typically we're going to start out with things that have to do with changes in humanity. Last week we talked about how to survive your own evolution. And today we're going to talk about, our path in life. Is the path that you are on taking you to where you want to go? And how do you figure things out along the way? So if this is your first time listening, there's a chat box right down on your YouTube screen, and we welcome any conversation or questions, or just to say hi. Definitely feel like you can jump in on the conversation. And afterwards too, if you listen to the replay, just please send us questions, or if you disagree on anything, we definitely welcome that too, because we don't think we know everything, that's for sure. And if you like it, hopefully you come back and you listen again. But tonight I'm joined by Sandy Neville. And Sandy's a dear friend out of Lawton, Oklahoma, originally from Canada. And we're always talking about earth changes and some of the, physical stuff that's going on, weather patterns, and what we're feeling in our physical bodies, always trying to figure stuff out. But, Sandy grew up in a small farm in Canada, and she'll tell you more about herself. But that's where she began her journey. She calls that her interdimensional journey with her spiritual team, where she was talking to herself, and kind of figured out, hey, there's something more going on here. I think like many of us have done that. So that's not something that people really like to talk about. There's so much stigma with that. And that's the other goal that I have, is to just start pulling some labels off, making things more okay, less taboo. And all those things happen outside of time and space as we know it. So for more information, or if you want to share this, definitely go ahead, and we're on Facebook, and we're here on YouTube. Sandy has some information. She'll share that with you later about how she found that she was a volunteer. She found that through her sessions with through quantum healing hypnosis. She's a fellow practitioner, and she considers herself to be an intuitive healer. She is a global visionary, and she's just an ordinary person, just like you and me. So I want to welcome Sandy here. Hi, Sandy.
Hi, Nicole. It's nice to be here.
When we were doing our test run last night, everything just went really smoothly, right? Like it couldn't have gone any better.
Right.
And then today when we got here, it was just like, one thing after the other. It's like, oh my gosh, what's happening? What's going on? But I think that's a good place to start. That, as we go through life, we have this idea of how things should be, how it should go. And even if we prepare to the best of our ability, there's always something that's going to come along and make you question, am I doing the right thing? Am I on the right path? Right. And it's really hard to start, oh my gosh, what's happening? Knowing what's right or what's wrong, or are you hearing the right thing, or is it my higher self, or is it me? It can get pretty confusing along the way.
Yes.
So, and even if we prepare to the best of our ability, I guess why I want to start off with is, what's one of the first experiences that you had that you would say, well, this was an extraordinary experience, or this is something that I just, I can't really explain what's going on, but it definitely makes you kind of question reality.
Right, right. That question would take me way back to my childhood, actually. I remember I had a bedroom of my own, and we lived on a farm. I remember always having to close the closet door at night, because if I didn't close that door, there was a gorilla that would come out at night. Now, at the time, that's what I thought it was a gorilla, because I could see it, I could feel it, but as long as that door was closed, I was okay. It wouldn't come out. I didn't know at the time, until much later, that that was most likely an experience with a Sasquatch, actually. So I did learn later that they lived back in the bush behind our house and our trees. So that was one of my first experience, which is a little odd. You don't expect to be able to talk to anybody about that. And then there were lots of other things that happened. I could communicate with animals. I could start to read the weather. Nobody taught me this either. I would read the weather, and I would know whether we were going to have a hard winter, we were going to have rain, whatever it was with the earth. I was very connected to the earth. I didn't really know why. It just seemed natural, just normal. And then there were lots of other things.
And this was when you were how old?
Gosh, 5 or 6 maybe.
Wow.
But I don't remember much before that, actually.
I've heard a lot of people say that they can't really remember either before the age of 5, 4-ish, sometimes the age of 2. But what do you? So did you tell your parents these things, or how did you know that this was different?
I did not. I don't remember telling my parents. I'm sure that if they knew, they would have just said, "Oh, well, we'll just shut the door." Like, "Oh, it's the boogeyman. We'll just keep the door shut," right? And to my mind, they just didn't see. If I did say something, they just didn't see it. One of the experiences that I remember was I would have this dark figure come and sit on the bed, and at first it kind of scared me. So I'd often tell it to go away. But I later learned, and I just learned this a couple of years ago, that what was happening was I had a visitor at night, and it would tell me to keep my one eye open at night. I didn't know what that was, so I would repeat that just like a parrot. I would repeat that to my dad when he went to bed. I'd stay up until they went to bed, and then I'd say, "Dad, can you keep one eye open tonight?" And he'd always say yes, and then I could go to sleep. I didn't know until later that keeping that one eye open was to keep my intuitive mind open. But now it makes sense.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've never had any, personal experience with what I would call like Sasquatch, or I've, heard people tell their stories. But, I haven't had a personal experience, so I don't really know, anything about it. But, I would think as a kid, if we see something that we don't understand, then typically we default to that fear thing.
Exactly. I was fearful, so I wanted the door shut. I didn't want it to come into my bedroom. And I didn't realize at the time that it was a Sasquatch. All I knew was it looked big and hairy, so it must have been a gorilla, right? Because our mind doesn't necessarily relate to something that we have no idea what it is. We always try to put things, adapt and put things into a box of what we know. It's comfortable that way.
Yeah. So, I mean, what do you think is the significance of being of the Sasquatch? First of all, kind of, being in your closet, that's kind of a weird place for one to be.
Yes.
You're living up in Canada. I mean, what do you know about those type of beings, or if somebody's listening to this and maybe they have a hard time,
It's comfortable that way.
kind of, because we're talking about reality here too.
Right.
Is it your reality, or is it a general reality? Is this a being that actually exists, or was it something that was more energetic or metaphysical? What do you think from your experience?
Well, to me, it was very real.
Somebody's listening to this.
Now I understand that I was probably seeing through the veil, right? Seeing an interdimensional being. But in my mind, I could see it, so it was very real for me. Why was it in a closet? Honestly, I think it was a portal. They can make portals wherever they want to. If they're trying to communicate to you, I personally feel that they probably helped me learn how to read the weather, the nature, that sort of thing. I don't remember them actually doing that, but it makes sense now because I always talk to myself. But there always seemed to be somebody around me, and you know how it is, right? That where you feel someone and you just talk to them like they're a friend. And now, when I've studied just a little bit about the Sasquatch, because it really later in life I just kind of left that, but they are very much concerned about the welfare of the earth. They can see things how we are harming her, and really wanting to get a message out. We need to stop this. We need to um, really stop what we're doing. Stop harming her. We all have to live here, including them, right? So that's. I think that was the only message. Maybe, um, maybe what they were trying to do is keep me awake and keep me understanding while I was young, because I really didn't have anyone else to talk to about this stuff. No one in my family would have got it. So,
Yeah. Interesting. I don't know what I would do, if I see like some hairy creature in my closet.
You shut the door.
I've had plenty of other experiences, like you said, feeling like somebody's in the room and, being really afraid and all that, and eventually coming to find out, like, look, it's just an aspect of myself or something like that. But, you're talking about the more interdimensional thing, and I think that brings us to a lot of the changes that are happening now for people. And, our physical reality is changing, not only but I think those things affect our physical reality too, and the changes in the earth and the shifts that are happening with that. I think it's kind of like the TV guide. It's kind of like telling us what's happening.
Right.
But, and I don't want to really get into the conversation of global warming and all those things, but what does all that have to do with me personally? So as you're growing up and you're having these experiences, and you can begin telling the weather. I mean, what does it matter at the end of the day if you can, if you can tell the weather or not? Like, what difference does that make to your personal life? Kind of like the TV guide.
Well,
like telling us what's happening.
The one thing that mattered for me was I was always very in tune with growing things, like growing a garden, and so I knew when to plant, when to harvest, all that sort of thing. Why was that important? I don't know. It just, for me, it was important. Now I see why it's important. I feel very strongly that we all need to be maybe not planting flowers, but maybe planting a garden. I see earth changes happening, inevitable. We could be the most loving, kind people right now, but the earth is going to go through some major changes. And we find that in our sessions sometimes. Some of that is revealed. And um, so one of the aspects that has really been on my heart lately is the need to have the food chain, to have locally grown food. And if you look around, um, the majority of people go to the grocery store and buy their groceries.
Yeah, you and I were talking about that last night, that because you mentioned something about there's a lot of people that are eating organic food or that are aware of chemicals and things like that that are used on their foods, but there are very few people that actually grow their food or know how to.
Right.
That's, one of the things that we talk about a lot is we're busy digging up our own backyard, because something that kept telling me for the last 6 months, grow a garden, grow food. I don't know how, but I'm going to try it anyway. But there's this real, it's not even just a necessity. It's this thing about responsibility.
Right.
That we're not really being responsible for ourselves, mentally, or physically or emotionally. We're always, looking outside for the next fix or the next answer. And it's so like ingrained with us because, that's what our parents did and their parents, and, so it goes down through history. So when I look at problems that we have or anything that's going on in my life, I first and foremost have to take responsibility for that. I need to know how to take care of myself, because if I can do that, then maybe I can hold the space for somebody else to learn how to take care of themselves. That's definitely an art that we've lost. That's what our parents did and their parents.
It is. I was fortunate to grow up in a rural community where we still grew gardens, and canning was normal for us. Having a huge garden was normal. I learned how to go and forage for berries, and I mean that was fun for me. That was free food. It was great. And then the years came when there weren't any berries. And I was like, well, what's going on? What happened? So I learned how there's cycles and what all that was about. But yeah, taking responsibility for our own existence. Doesn't it come down to feeding yourself, clothing yourself, making sure that your family's needs are taken care of, not outside of yourself, right?
Yeah, I think basics.
Yeah, just the basics. And education. You're a homeschool mom. I homeschooled my kids as well. I feel very strongly that we as parents need to take responsibility for our kids and their learning.
I never would have thought I was going to homeschool. I was just so adamantly against it. But, things just turn out the way that they do, and you just have to do it. And,
Exactly. I will tell you, at the time, my sister-in-law, she was homeschooling her children, and I said, I will never do that. Well, of course you're going to do that if you say you'll never do something. But I sent my oldest child to school, to play school, actually. She was adorable. But after a few months of play school, she turned into a monster. And I thought to myself, there's no way. I just can't keep doing this. So I learned how to, homeschool, which is, it's a huge responsibility. But amazingly enough, I did not wreck my children. They're all wonderful, wonderful people. And they all have jobs and they're all living on their own. So they did really good,
Yeah. So these things that happened to you as a child, do you think that's because you had some kind of ability or some kind of awakening, or that we just have the natural ability to perceive some of these things when we're younger?
I think when we're younger, we're more connected. We're connected to our whole being. As we grow older, more of life kind of gets in the way, and and we lose that connection a little bit. Some people are able to keep it, and some others just lose it. They lose it completely, and then they struggle to get it back. I don't think I ever lost it completely. I just kind of hid it under the rug for a while. 'Cause I always knew it was there. I always talked to whatever I thought was God, um, but I never understood God the way that, um, let's say, the churches explained God. My God was so much bigger than that. So um, I had that from a very early age. I understood that completely. Um, and just little things along the way happened, you know. I remember seeing faces in my window. Now, in my bedroom, the window was up about 8, 9 feet. So nobody was actually standing out there, but I would see faces. So another thing is, you know, that blind needed to be pulled down at night. And if it wasn't pulled down, I was not getting up to go pull it down. I just turned over so I didn't get to see the faces.
I can totally relate to that. I remember running through the house, having to close the curtains at night, and
Right.
there's nothing on the other side, but there's still this kind of you get that feeling. There's just a sensation, like something's watching you, and then we think it's paranormal. But so, what do you think that was?
I think it was actually I think it was ETs. I have come to find that they were Arcturian beings. Just watching, making sure everything's okay. Not spooky, not scary, but to a child, when you don't understand what that is, you shift into that fear mode, right? And you want to block it and just keep it away from you.
Yeah.
And for up until even just a few years ago, I knew that ETs existed, but as long as they were over there and I didn't have to actually deal with them, it was okay. I didn't really want to bring them into my world because there was so much on television of how scary they were and all that kind of stuff. Well, Dolores Cannon, reading her books, it gives you a completely different perspective on what ETs are and why they're here. And I'm sure that there's some people that feel that they're really bad. I've not had a bad experience.
I would agree with that. I've always kind of, believed that there's life out there. I wasn't really, quite sure what form it took. I just knew that I never even questioned that.
Right.
And I was always, looking up at the stars and just, feeling that connection to something beyond me, but not in the, what I would say, like the divine or the God kind of way, just that there's life out there. And I've had experiences too, as a child. I remember one time standing in my doorway in my bedroom and looking at myself on the bed, and I could see my one body on the bed, what I perceived to be my physical body. Then I could see the other part of me just kind of like hovering, a few feet above that. And then I didn't even realize till recently, like maybe the last year, that there was a third perception, and that was me standing there with a being next to me. But I think as children, we just maintain that natural connection to these other dimensional aspects of who we are. It wasn't until I agree with you, until finding Dolores's work, that I, for the first time, really could read something and hear something. It's like, yes, this is what I feel like on the inside. I don't agree with all the negativity, and I don't even like, necessarily naming like different races or anything like that, because
right,
those things are still from personal experience, but there's commonality. If you hear something enough times through people, then you have to pay attention. But I think that's us checking up on ourselves, just like Dolores Cannon found too. I find that over and over in my sessions too, the same as you do too. We encounter these other beings, and it's nothing but unconditional love and care and guidance. And it's like, I would like every other person to experience that, to find that. But obviously it's not for everybody. But I think there's way too much fear in this world. I find that over and over. Yeah. But yeah, the Sasquatch thing is really interesting. And I forgot that we had talking about that, that we spoke about that before. Other beings. But and it's nothing but. So why do you think that that's significant to the weather or to the earth? Like what is their connection to earth changes or vibrational changes in the earth? There's way too much fear.
Honestly, I don't know. Like I said, I kind of steered away from the Sasquatch, the phenomenon and everything. I knew they existed, but I didn't really go down that road. I've done a little bit of looking since then, just in the last few years. I actually had a really good conversation with Kiwani, and I would mess up his last name if I tried, but he does. He's written a couple of books about the Sasquatch, and I had the pleasure of having dinner with him one evening, and it really kind of came back into my world. So, again, why did it come back into my world? Well, I think that there's messages that they're just waiting there for me to access them. There's a lot going. I mean, everybody has a lot going on in their life right now. So much, and my life kind of took a turn, and I have a lot of other beings that I'm making contact with and getting information with, and I want to know how to apply that information and move forward. It's great. I love the past life work that we do, but I like to take that and figure out how we're to move forward from this point forward. And what you said about these beings that are, kind of there, and they're an aspect of ourselves. Well, they all are an aspect of us, right? And we can tap into all of those beings whenever we want to, through meditation. And that was a huge eye-opener for me. We don't actually have to go to somebody. We can actually do that ourselves, but we have to learn how to trust the information that we're getting and where it's coming from, and identify who it's from, what it is, what do they want us to know.
Yeah, that's so true. Meditation changed my life.
Absolutely. Yes.
Do you think that it's maybe because of the concept that you have of what it was distorted, or nobody ever really took the time to explain what it is really?
We don't actually have to go to somebody. We can actually do that ourselves, but we have to learn how to. I'm going to do what we do in a QHHT session. Can you rephrase your question, please?
Why do you think it was so hard to meditate before? Like what did you find that's like, oh, this is much easier than I thought it would be?
Oh, okay. So I thought, to meditate, I had to get in a position and really do some mantras or something, and be there and clear my mind of everything, which we want to do. But nobody told me that meditation equals listening.
Why do you think it was so hard?
It's listening. You clear your mind so you can listen, and that you can ask questions too. Oh, okay. And that was the part that I think I stumbled with, was that I was actually allowed to ask questions. That's how you get the knowledge. Mantras, you go into meditation, or you know that there's a being in the room, and this is something that's happened many times. Is there will be a being in the room, and a lot of times I'll have people tell me, oh yeah, we have a ghost in the house, and I say, well, why is he there? Well, I don't know. I'm like, well, ask the questions. So I think that for me, learning that meditation, you could go into meditation and actually get answers. That was huge for me.
Yeah.
Because I'm the kind of person that literally I am meditating almost every moment of the day anyway. You know, I'm always conversing with a different aspect of myself, or I'm out in nature, I'm walking, enjoying nature, interaction between us. And that's a form of meditation too. You know, and so they're all defining the word, right? I always say I'm not very good at English. I get pictures better. I understand more in thought process instead of the English language. And that's my native tongue is English, but I find it very confusing a lot of times.
I think the language that we use, you know, the verbal language that we use really does slow us down. And it's
Yes.
hard to describe some of these concepts that we receive. To me, my communication is completely visual. It's entire scenes playing out. I always say it's like this little TV that's running in the background.
Right.
But, you know, saying that meditation is like listening, I didn't really fully understand that until I started practicing QHHT. Until I heard the types of questions that we would ask, and realized, because we're so good at the talking part. Like you said that, you know, you grew up and you were talking to yourself. I did that. I think on some level, all of us do it. We're so good at talking, but we are really, really poor listeners. And then to discern what you're hearing, you know, almost becomes this listening. I didn't really fully understand that. Like weeding through the dark with the light off.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're trying to figure it out, but because we hear the stories that we tell ourselves, and most of them are very negative, it's so easy to believe those things. And when the little bit of light comes through, that's the story, that's the positive story, or I would say it's more the true reality, then we question it, then we second guess it, because we haven't learned how to trust ourselves. We haven't learned to practice that relationship between you and your higher self. For me, meditation is reevaluation. It's where I can become an observer to who I am and access that part of me where I can ask questions. I have complete creative control and ability, and I can go and experience anything that I want to experience. Then we question it, then we second. And so if it's me, you know, sitting somewhere on a rock and completely disconnecting from the world, that's not what I want. That's not my goal. I want to go inside and find an entire another universe to explore. And I think it's when we do that we run into these dimensional shifts where, to me, it's like time traveling.
Yes.
When I go inside, I don't need a little tin can, as I say, to travel from, you know, here to planet X. Sitting somewhere, my consciousness, your consciousness, every other being that wants to access that, have this part of their consciousness that they can travel by thought.
Yes, exactly.
And then when we travel by thought, we change shape, we change form, we reevaluate, we come back and we readjust. To me, it's like time travel. I think to me that's knowledge, that's wisdom. It's saying I don't have to retain the mental knowledge like we're being taught through education to memorize things. That it's a way of accessing information at any point that I need it, because I'm connected to everything that there is.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes.
But, you know, growing up, that's, it's hard to maintain that.
Well, it is, because most of us get forced into a school situation where now we have to, where before we were able to go out and play, right? At least for our generation anyway. I went outside and I played and learned that there was, you know, there's life and death. I mean, you squish that caterpillar, that thing dies, right? So you understand and you do all this working with nature, but then we take a child and we go stick them into a institution, and I do really mean an institution. It's like a jail with locks, and we put them in a desk, and now you have to sit there and be quiet, and you have to learn stuff. That is so not normal for our learning capabilities. That's just the opposite of what is natural. So I
Yeah.
think that literally it's I wouldn't it's forced out of us. The creativity is really forced out of us because now you can't daydream in school. You have to be focusing on whatever subject the teacher's teaching. Um, and like we're we have kindergarten now, we have preschool, and we're just uh, getting those children as soon as we can, and forcing that connection out of them.
But it's
How,
one of the things that really irritate me is when we meet other people, the first thing that we're taught to ask, what do you do?
yeah, yeah,
Like that defines, who you are, your as a person, as a human being, as opposed to that thing just being what is, part of what's keeping you alive. And I think that's a lot of people are really unhappy because they've become so defined by their career that they've spent 30, 40, 50 years in, that
hmm
once that's away, when we meet other people, they don't really remember who they are
right.
because they've lived this, who you are. And I don't want anybody to think like thing like that, or having a career for 40, 50 years is bad. But
No,
I think that you need to remember who you are underneath of that. You're doing that job because of who you are, because it's the relationship with the people that are important, and that
right.
uses your skills and your talents and your abilities. But they don't really remember who they are. We just don't remember who we are.
Exactly, exactly. Although I will say that I think that the children are remembering and they're keeping connected, and that's a really wonderful thing to see. Um, the parents, though, need to really be aware of that, and they're going to have to change the way that they educate these children and the way that they deal with these kids, because traditional ways that we were taught don't work. These kids are smart. They're smarter than we are. you know. Um,
So what do you notice with kids? I would say like maybe the last or even 14 years. That's different from when we were kids. Like, do you think there's any difference that in their consciousness or how much they remember, or their ability? Um, Maybe that's kind of an evolution question, but what do you think is different?
well, that's a huge question. Um, One, they tend to carry information in with them. So, like for instance, a lot of the children, they can't stand to be like arguments. You know, um, they just don't like to be in that environment. It bothers them. A lot of these children are empaths, and so you put them into a situation where there's a lot of um, like imagine a gymnasium full of kids, right? You put one of these children in there, and they're going to be feeling all these emotions, and so it's just it overloads them and they shut down, right? So to be very aware of the emotional state of these kids, um, they have abilities. I mean, some of them are super smart. I mean, um, I've seen actually, I know one girl who her mom came to have a session with me, and she went home. Her mom went home, and the daughter knew everything that was talked about in the session. Now, how does that happen, right? Um, Except that she's very in tune, very connected to her mother. So they have abilities that we can't even really define yet. I don't know that we need to define them, but we need to recognize them
Yeah.
and recognize that this is actually normal for those children. Now, some of them are going. Some children don't have that ability for whatever reason, right? But these other ones that do, we need to not put them all together in a lump sum and say, well, you have to learn this. They're a little bit special. They're here for a reason, like the volunteers, that they're here for a reason. These new children came in with, they have answers that we couldn't come up with. No?
Yeah, I call them sense eight, because there's this show on Netflix that's called Sense Eight, where people share senses, and they, some of them can see what the others see, or they can feel, or they have some of their talents or their abilities that kick in that they share. But that's what I think of empath. I don't think of just the emotional part. I think that we're literally starting to share space.
Yes.
Because of all the work that's been done through what we call volunteers. And maybe we need to explain that just a little bit. There's this concept that there are souls that are helping the transition that we're going through, that came and helped to prepare the way. Bringing in new soul energy so that we don't have to go through forced reincarnation. We can break these cycles and patterns and bring in this new energy that have not been used to some of the violence that's been here. I think that's the conflict thing you were talking about too, because in their other experiences, they haven't, this planet here is an intense place.
It is.
No other, in my limited personal experience.
Right.
But I think that they're the ones that are here to show us that we have to find unity within ourselves. We have to cooperate with each other. We have to learn to unconditionally love. And it's incredibly difficult, especially with the climate of the world right now, because we want we want everything to be, to be equal and fair. And well, that's not the world that we created. We created this.
Right.
We contributed to it. We repeated the stories over and over. So if we really want things to be different, we have to accept that we have to let go of everything that we've ever thought that we knew,
right?
The systems that we've entrained each other with, and really, truly do things differently.
Yes.
But there are certain things we don't have control over. We don't have control over the planet and what happens to it, even if we are good stewards.
Right.
Which we're not really being good.
No, we're not being good stewards right now.
But I've heard. I don't know if you ever listened to Cryon.
Yes, sometimes.
So I've listened to several of his teachings, and one of the things that he talks about that's been really interesting is like the Akashic field, or the magnetic grid, or the memory. When I look at the physical body, the way that I see it in my intuitive mind is it's a storehouse of information. That's how I see the magnetic field of what we are. And the planet's the same way. And so some people call this being able to read the Akashic records, but it's kind of like the history of everything. I think it's more than that. I think it's how we're creating. So he has this theory. One of the things that they've talked about that's unique about Canada, which I haven't really been able to talk to you about, is Canada is one of the very few places where there's never been war. Or there hasn't been the level of conflict like we've seen
right
America somewhat, or especially in Europe or England,
right
or Africa. But there's something that's different about Canada, especially. Look at the Prime Minister. Canada is one of,
Oh yes, I know that one well.
And whether you like him or not, he's kind of a pleasant person. He's not. I'm just gonna say he's not an asshole, okay? Right. Especially in Europe. But there's something that's different about Canadian people. They're known to be friendly. They're known to not really want conflict and things like that. I mean, that's just what I have learned from that. Maybe I'm wrong. But what's different about like North America and the area that we live,
Oh yes.
aside from the country and the that's the United States, deeper than that, beyond the borders and the boundaries? What's different about this place ever?
Well, I do think that land holds memory, right? Um, it's very clear to me that what goes on the surface will go into the soil. And um, I think we talked about this at one time here. And there hasn't been as much conflict on the North American soil in general. Now, if you go back a ways, of course, there's going to be fighting, there's going to be civil war and all that stuff, but it doesn't have the centuries and centuries and thousands of years like the Eastern countries do, right? Um,
Yeah, I
so
mean,
it's like
yeah,
the vibration here, I believe, is higher than say in other countries. And I say that I feel it. Somebody that lives in Italy could dispute it. But I feel that there's a higher vibration just because there hasn't been as much conflict on the soil. It plays a huge part in the clearing, the amount of clearing that needs to happen. And I'm not sure what Cryon said about that.
yeah. No, I mean, yeah, something pretty similar to that, because even though we were involved in World War I and World War II, the actual physical conflict didn't happen here.
Right.
There's definitely been stuff here, especially if you look at Native American history and that, but overall, a lot of the global conflicts that have happened has kind of happened outside of this bubble.
Right. Which is fairly unique, if you think about it. I mean, North America covers a huge surface of land, and the conflict hasn't been as much. It's got to be important in the overall picture.
So what do you think? What do you think? Like, if we look at the native land that's here, the Native Americans that they have their own traditions, and opinions of how to take care of the land and our role within it. Do you think that there's I don't know. I had one question and then something else came up. This is how it goes, right?
Right.
Thoughts are being replaced. Overall picture. What do we do today? What do you think if we want to embrace this space that's available for us to do clearing? I mean, where do we start? What do we do?
Well,
I'm really putting you on the spot here.
Yeah, you are. That's okay. The very first place to start is in your own life. You have to start there before you can move out of your space. So you start looking at yourself and who you are. Find out who you are. I really needed to know where I came from. That was huge for me. But where do we start? It's the responsibility thing that we talked about. Start taking responsibility for your own actions. I've been someone that has always had respect for the land. I do not throw an apple core out the window. It goes in the compost bin. And if you drive down any road, you see garbage everywhere. Well, if we're not respecting anything outside of ourselves, we're not respecting ourselves either. So it has to start there, and then you can move it out. I find it uniquely interesting right now that there are so many issues coming up for everybody. It doesn't matter who it is. There's issues. There's things that you are going to have to deal with this, and you're going to have to deal with it now. You cannot hide it under the rug anymore. and that could be health, it could be finances, it could be location, relationship, anything. But it's, again, it's taking responsibility for your own actions. After that, we need to go local. We need to go into our communities, into our neighborhoods. North America has a huge, unbelievable amount of people that are homeless. There's no need. If we actually took care of our neighbor, um, as ourself, as a reflection of ourself, because they are actually us, we go a long way in helping all of humanity. Now, one of the interesting things that I've observed, and I'm not going to say this is good or this is bad, and because I really don't want to talk too much about politics, but right now we're in a very volatile place, and what I'm seeing is that the United States is pulling back from being in a lot of different things, the UN and in different countries and different things. But we need to work at home. We need to fix our own structures, our infrastructures. That's what the United States needs to do. Well, we need to fix our own infrastructures too. Our connections. We talk about the battery, making sure that the battery is connected. We need to do that in our own life, and then in our own community, in our own state, and then in our own country. But it starts right at home.
Yeah. No, we talk about that so often. I mean, not just you and I, but other people that I talk to. Conversation right now is shifting a lot around that. Okay, well, I can't get away from these problems anymore that before it was easy to ignore or to push that emotion down, and or there's these old things that come out of the woodwork. And I think it does have to do with the responsibility factor.
Exactly.
One of the things that I heard today, I had a beautiful session today, and it was all about love, unconditional love, and pain. When we experience pain, and these kids that can't get away from these sensates,
Right.
are not only experiencing their own feelings and their own emotions, but they're also experiencing the pain of of all the other people that share that space. I had a beautiful and the people they're connected to.
Right.
And I think it's important right now that we realize that these kids have chosen to come in with that connection open, not willing to close it down, so that we can finally see how seriously lacking this world is of love.
Right. Huge. Very, very important. One of the things in my own life is being a volunteer, that involves having imprinted lives put on you, right? And separating that, okay, I know that's an imprint, and what was I supposed to get from that to use here and stuff. But I feel global, like a global empath, right? So if the consciousness that's going on in the world, if it's swaying one way, I'll feel it. And a lot of times I'll have to go, is that mine? Or is that not mine?
How do
So that's how do I do it?
How do you feel it?
Well, a lot of times, like, I'll feel great, and then all of a sudden it'll be like this wave of anger that comes over me, and I'm like, wait a minute, there's nothing that has happened that I should feel anger. So that's not mine. Sometimes it's a great sadness that comes over me. It's just like a wave that washes over you, and I'll literally start crying, and I'm like, wait a minute, I have nothing to be that sad, or I'm not grieving. There's nothing that I should be that sad about, but it's this wave that washes over me. And so when I notice that, that's when I can send out, and as an empath, we need to do this. That's when I can send out that unconditional love to everybody, and hopefully it touches them at some level. If it doesn't, they may not recognize that they feel it, but their soul still feels it because we're all connected, right? But we really, if you feel that global aspect, um, we really need to send that unconditional love out there. It so needs it. And like with the earth, we need to send the earth unconditional love as well. It's, my mission is more with the earth in rather than people, but being an empath, I can feel what the people on the earth feel. I can also feel what the earth feels. So it's kind of a double whammy, right?
Yeah.
And I feel the earth in my body, the connection, very connected with the earthquakes. So I feel if North America is going to have a large earthquake, fairly large, I will feel it in the small of my back. And it is like I am being pulled in two. And then another thing that I just recently learned, and it has to do with the earth too, and I learned this in one of my sessions. So I didn't get the information by meditating. It was just offered to me in one of the sessions. My right hip will sometimes just hurt and throb like crazy, and I didn't do anything to it. There's nothing wrong with it, but it would just hurt. And so the higher self of this person, which is basically us, because we're all connected, they said that the tectonic plates shifting, sliding.
Dang.
Yeah. So, I mean, other people will probably have other things, but those are the two things that I really notice about the earth. And we're not going to be able to stop those kinds of things. Those are the things that are out of our personal control, but we have the responsibility in our own backyard of what we can do.
So, do you think this is wow? I guess when I think about, when we kind of set out on this path, when we come into this world, we have this idea of how it's going to go, and then we're pulled into all these different directions and these different interests, and they seem like none of them match, right? We've talked about Sasquatch, we've talked about self-sustainability, we've talked about ETs, we've talked about earthquakes. Oh my gosh, there's probably 4 or 5 more things that we've talked about, but the one thing that connects it all together is you. It's me. It's us individually. That's the common denominator there. That's what's important. And sometimes we can focus too much on those outward things or these individual little things that are happening, and forgot that all of those things are related to us. That's one thing that we learned through Dolores Cannon too, was what does this have to do with me? Because it's all good and well, I know this information and it's out there, but what does it have to do with my personal life? One thing that connects it all together. I think that's because we're learning to facilitate these shifts. We're helping each other. We're kind of throwing out the book, starting over in a different way. You're starting to write your own book, which you're doing anyway, literally.
Right.
But I think we're starting to write our own guidebook, our own manual, our own techniques, our own way of doing things, and really becoming comfortable with that. Another person's method or technique to be working for you very long.
Exactly. We're individual people, but we're of a whole, right? So one of the reasons I'm writing my story, well, basically my higher self or that aspect of me told me to write the story because it will help people understand that they too have all these interesting things happen to them. They are also connected to all aspects of their whole being. They may not know it now, but they are. Um, we as humans like to compartmentalize everything. You know, here we are in this 3D world, living this life, and you know, oh well, oh yeah, I believe that there's angels, but you know, like they're outside of myself, or I believe that there's you know other beings or fairies or something, but they're outside of myself, and they're not. They're part of us. You know, it's we
Yeah, that's the truth.
need to somehow integrate all of it. As we're integrating, not get caught up in um, not get caught up in so much of all of the different stories, but what to take from that and what to use now. Because we're in this, we are creating the new earth. We are creating new systems. I am constantly told, dream the new dream. What do I want this world to look like? You know, it's one thing to say, oh, I want peace everywhere. What does that look like? You know, what visually, what does that look like? I want people to have good, healthy food to eat. What does that look like? You know, that's again taking responsibility for ourselves um, and connecting all the pieces together.
Yeah. I think that's when you start creating. It's when you actually
Mhm.
start doing things and you start taking action instead of it just kind of being out here in la la land.
Right, right. Well,
Sometimes I like to be there.
yeah, I do too. Because sometimes being stuck in this, and I do say stuck in this dimension, you know, being Sandy here in Lawton, seems like I am really just in the middle of insanity, you know. Um, but there's so much more. This is just one level, and there's so much more. So when you connect the dots and you figure out, and you can literally see and interact with what's out there, then you can start to play. Then you can start to have fun with life again. Where I think so many people, they lost the ability to have fun. They lost the desire to experiment, to play, to create new things. And it doesn't have to be anything huge or great or big or what. It could be music, it could be painting, it could be gardening, it could be anything. You know, one of the things I like to do is work with wood. You know, it doesn't have to be anything super big, but create something.
Yeah. I think you have to create something every day.
Right,
My,
exactly.
yeah. My husband Dan, he kind of taught me that. He creates little like he likes creating digital art and putting it on Instagram, and it's one of the hashtags he used one day was create every day. I'm like, I really like that
Yes.
because we think that we need to solve the world's problems, and we have such a like long-term view. We want to plan, years out, when really all we need to do is just pay attention to where we are right now, because
Right.
otherwise you're going to feel like you're not on the path that you need to be, or you're going to start questioning your direction instead of really learning to trust yourself. And as you say, like these other beings, well, what would it be like to have a life like that? What would it be
Mhm.
like to be a fairy, or to be an ET, or to live on a different planet? um, I'm always giving people permission to like use your imagination like you were a child. Who's the person that came around one day and said, "Oh, you're using your imagination"? Well, that's not real. Like who said that? And
Exactly.
why do we associate that with childish things? I really think kids are the key to our future, and we've heard that over and over in sessions too. The kids are the key
Exactly.
because by nature, and I speak generally because I know there's situations where people might say, well, maybe that's not true, but I think by nature kids are not very judgmental. They're taught to be that way.
Right. Right.
If they didn't have an environment of this rigid system that we put them in, we would find that by nature they like to have fun. They like to go explore. They don't really care what time it is. They play until they're done and tired, and then they rest, and then they eat, and they just go with the flow.
Right.
We're the ones that are stuck.
Exactly.
Stuck in our calendars. And
Yes.
the next appointment, and the next thing on TV. We're constantly looking at the clock, and we're keeping ourselves in the loop that way. So
I agree. Sorry, I just had to take a cough candy. I feel like I'm going to cough, but no, I agree 100% that the children are the key. They are the ones that they still have their imagination. We need to have an imagination equally as important as knowledge, maybe more so than knowledge, because that's where we dream the dream. In the session that you facilitated, actually, my higher self was telling me, a 3-year, 5-year, 10-year plan. That's crazy. There is no such thing. And I think we're moving through this what we call time right now so rapidly that we're going to look back and we're going to say, in a year's time, we're going to look back and we're going to not even recognize it. We're moving that fast. So being open, having that imagination, feeling what you want to feel, not so much maybe the exact, and now I know that there's going to be some people that disagree with me here, but not the exact outcome, but more the general feeling of what you're wanting. And you allow the universe to bring to you the people that you need to meet, the connections, the whatever it is, they will come to you if you allow it, and if you don't put a time frame on it.
Yeah, one of the things that when I was going through my notes and stuff today, just kind of thinking about what we were going to be talking about, was that this thought came that when we are, and I don't want to harp on the responsibility thing too much, but it seems like a good phrase, but when we take care of our own stuff, when you're focused on your own life, and you're being responsible for your physical well-being, that means taking care of what you need to eat and your physical space, keeping things organized and clear, keeping your mental space organized and clear, so that it's easy for you to shift directions. But basically, when we're responsible for ourselves, we don't have time to worry.
Right.
I mean, look 200 years ago when we were out on the farms, having to plow with the livestock. We didn't have time to be worrying about the stuff that we're worrying about now.
No.
I think that people have too much time on their hands. I think that I want to just throw out my clock. I don't want to schedule. In my dream world, my ideal world, I just know when you want to talk to me. Or we just get on, Facebook, where you just show up at my door and like, okay, we agreed that this is the time to work together or to spend some time together. I think that's what we are being led into or being trained for.
I agree.
And our imagination is the bridge that's making that possible. I don't want to suggest that there's a different way of communicating. My ideal world, I just know, with all these different aspects. We just get on, I think science is catching up to that too, hopefully.
I think they are, but I think that people who are connected, connected through thought, okay, they're going to be more telepathic. That's come up several times in our sessions. Already, I have a couple of ladies that, I'll think about them about 3 days in a row, and by golly, they phone me. So we're already accessing that. We don't play with it though, right?
Yeah.
We haven't developed it. We haven't spent time, but we haven't created what that looks like. You know, that's part of the dream is actually imagining what that's going to feel like, imagining what it will look like. And I have in my house, I have a little picture that says, we create our tomorrows by what we dream today. And that's so true. You know, nothing happens tomorrow that I didn't create already. Whether, even if I don't like it, I still created it. You know, and that's one of those
true.
very
That's true.
interesting, yeah, very interesting things. We want to always be creating something wonderful, and then something happens, and we go, "Oh, what happened? I didn't create that." Yes, we did. Yes, we did. We created everything. And yeah, and so why? You know, ask the questions. This happened to me. Why did it happen? Like, for instance, like, as you know, I got this head cold a few days ago, and I had things planned for this week, for Friday, Saturday. I mean, the whole weekend was planned. But apparently I miscalculated everything, and my body said, no, we're going to shut you down. So, um, so I had to cancel stuff, and I looked at it and realized that I was trying to cram way too much stuff in, and so I created myself to get sick, so I could spread it out a little bit and actually focus more intensely on each thing and give it the amount of time and respect that it needs, instead of cramming it all together.
Yeah. Shame. Well, I hope you feel better soon, but I think that we do that a lot. We create our situations and then we end up complaining about them.
Yes.
Like it, right? But you were saying that, you know, practicing how to kind of create your reality or set yourself up through your in that dream state or dreamscape. And I think that is what's happening when we go to sleep at night when we're dreaming.
Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely experiencing that, where I will dream things tonight and it will play out in the next day. I had
Right.
night I dreamt that I was, we do that a lot, we create our, helping a couple get married, and I don't have anything on my schedule for a while, and this morning I had a lady call me. She's like, can you marry us today? I'm like, no, I can't do it today, I have too much stuff. But I still tried to see how I could squeeze it in, because I didn't want her to be disappointed because she couldn't find anybody else.
Right.
And I just, you know, kept hearing that inner voice is just stop, slow down,
Mm-hmm.
and ask her why. And then so everything worked out. I'm like, oh, okay, well, we can do it tomorrow.
Right.
But I think we're never uninformed as to what's happening to us. And if you get to that point where you can be in the flow, then you're not dreaming where it's setting you up or trying to weed through what you've set up for the next year or two to kind of, I don't know, shove you back in gear. I just, you know, kept hearing that inner voice to where you can get to, okay, I'm in the flow. What I dreamed tonight is setting me up for what I need to know tomorrow. And I'm not working on stuff from a year or 2 or 3 years ago.
Right. Right.
We're never uninformed as to what's happening.
Well,
And
let me tell you, I am not, how would I put that? I am so living in the moment that, you know, if it happened this morning, I'm probably not remembering it. If it happened yesterday, it might as well have been a month ago. It's that definite. Like, it's just, it's behind me. And a lot of times I have to really focus to pull it back into this reality. And I'm finding that that's just been in the last couple of months where it's gotten that noticeable. Like, I've always not had a great memory, but just in the last couple of months, it's where, you know, here I am. In an hour, I'm over here, and what happened, that might as well have been last week. It's that real for me.
Yeah. My theory that I have around things like that are happening is that time as we know it is falling away.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm seeing it as like either gaps in time, or how these loops of time, some things are pushed up to the surface that we then need to remember. But do you think you had to do anything differently? Did it just naturally happen? Is there something that facilitated that transition to where you're just kind of more in the moment now? My theory that I have around happening is that time as we know it,
You know, I really believe that
either gaps
we all, as souls, set up like pivotal points for us, for our growth and what we need to learn and when we need to learn it. And I think I just reached one of those. So I could say, yeah, it was written in the stars, you know, back in December. Maybe it was, but that's just when I really noticed it. Maybe for other people, it's not like that. I don't really get into that so much as I keep track of my own stuff, right?
Yeah.
Because it's really too hard to keep track of all of it.
You know, I know that we both listened to David Palmer, the Leo King. But he does like really great, interesting astrology analysis.
Maybe it was, but
and it's interesting the way that he talks about it is that, you know, there are things that affect us personally, individually, and then there are the
I don't really get into
planetary or astrological shifts or changes that are also happening. Just as we're changing, the rest of everything else is changing too. And we go through these collective shifts, or these collective like gateways is how I see them.
Right.
That's what I see as the imagination too. It's like a gateway, like a stargate or something like that.
Right.
The way that he talks about where, you know, there are things that you don't have to do. I don't think you have to do anything unique or special, except just have that realization of when you're doing something, and that you can do it differently. So it's like catching yourself in the act.
Right. Right.
And I think that's the part that's more activated or more online now in the last couple months.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Maybe like the self-awareness has been amped up a little bit.
Right. Right.
I'm hearing that from a lot of people that have never had, you know, experiences, or have never really been in tune with what we would call the higher self, or, you know, it just wasn't part of their daily life.
Right.
They're noticing things that they didn't notice before. They're starting to question things that they haven't questioned before.
Exactly.
Why am I doing the same thing over and over?
Right.
Maybe like the self-awareness. Just a lot of questions.
Right. I would agree with you that there's collectively we are going through things, and you know what, those collective things that we're going through, you couldn't stop that if you tried. That's what I understand. It is time. It is that, you know, that's the part that's the collective part is written in the stars, so to say, so to speak. Your reaction to that is what we create, right?
Mm.
So you know, we could collectively be the self-realization. Okay, so now that we are we're collectively we're becoming more self-aware. What are you personally going to do with that? Are you going to, you know, I'm quite sure that there's going to be some people that go on to one side of the spectrum, and then other people are going to go on to another side of the spectrum, you know. And so how do you work through that? How do you maneuver through all of this? I think that's really important. And everybody's doing it, you know, but it's all different. Everybody's doing it, but it's different.
Yeah. Are you going to? So, you know, kind of in summary, if you have any advice for people that, you know, are interested in some of the changes that are happening, we're all noticing the weather changes. It's been a really warm winter.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had some cold days, but we haven't had snow really.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's the, what's the,
Doing it, but it's different.
the little groundhog thing that they do. Kind of in summary, where the groundhog comes out and sees its shadow. Well, I think there was something wrong with the groundhog this year. But what advice would you give people? How do they focus on their own lives? How do they really warm winter?
Oh, that's a loaded question too.
Yeah. I was trying to not answer the question as I was saying it, but
well,
how can people be more responsible for themselves with like practical? What practical advice do you have for people?
One, stop getting into everybody's business. Okay, let people experience their experience here without you sticking your nose in it. Number one. And then focus your attention back onto you. So what's going on in your life that you need to address? And if you don't know what's going on in your life that you need to address, look at the people that come into your life. So let me see. I'm thinking about an example here. So you have somebody comes into your life and they're talking about maybe childhood hurts, right? And you're like, oh yeah, I had that, but I dealt with that already. Did you really? Is there something more that you need to do, right? Look at the people that maybe revisit that. I'm sure that there's a little bit of revisiting that we need to do. Focus on your own stuff, though. That's the key. Get your own life uncluttered. Meditate. Every single session, QHHT session I have, tells people they need to meditate. Why? Because our team, all our aspects of ourselves, they're trying so hard to help us, and we're just kind of la 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 la, and we don't pay attention to them. To meditate and ask them to come in. They're not really allowed to come in without us asking. They're not. There's a law of non-interference. So they will try to give you hints, but we really need to ask for help. Ask your team. Everybody has a team.
That's a free will aspect too. We have free will in everything that we do. As you were talking about, asking your team for help, I think asking other people in your life too. There's nothing more challenging than asking somebody that's involved in your life, hey, what do you see that I can improve on? Because we don't want to hear the criticism. It's really hard to take. But if we just hold that open space and say, everybody has a team, and not judge the information and not judge the person for that, but just genuinely, what do you see that I don't see? I think my eyes just kind of open up. But it's been such an interesting journey. I never thought that I would do the stuff that I do now. I was in banking for so long. I thought that's what I was going to do for the rest of my life. But here I am talking to other beings and ETs and not judge the information and not all that fun stuff.
Yeah, and it's fascinating and it's fun and it's exploring our universe. And we can do that right here. We can do that in a session. We can do that in meditation. We can do that just by going into that dreamscape. And then life doesn't have to be hard and boring and dull and awful. There's a lot of people that I talk to, and gosh, you just want to say life isn't like that. You just have to expand your thought process just a little bit to grab something else and create with that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
You know, I heard today one of the things that was repeated, and it's so absolutely true, that we have to learn how to unconditionally love others, especially when they're hurt or especially when they're in pain. It's not your responsibility to go and fix it for them, but it is your responsibility to love them.
Right, right.
In those situations that come up, we're not here to experience the misery.
No.
We're here to experience the love. The love is the thing that connects it all together, and not this cheesy Valentine's kind of day love, or the
Right.
You're my child or my partner kind of love. But no, this is human being to human being, the very essence of who we are. I recognize myself in you, and I recognize where your pain is and where your hurt is. And I want to hold that space for you so that you can fill it with your own love, with your own light.
Right. Right.
And that has very practical applications to our day-to-day life, to when you get up in the morning and your first interactions that you have with your family, to the job that you do. There's so many opportunities just littered throughout your day to experience or express a little bit of kindness, a little bit of compassion. And I want that space for you. So that
I often think that I may be the only kind person that somebody meets during a day. I better make sure I say something nice to them. And it doesn't matter who it is. I'd like to tell people, let me see here. So for instance, I went to a restaurant, and it was a guy's third day, and he's at the till. It was a fast food restaurant. I know everyone doesn't like fast food, but it was his third day, and he was having trouble. And I said, thank you. I appreciate what you're doing. I have time, not a problem. I could not do your job. Thank you. And he got a big smile on his face, and it was like somebody recognized him. They, and I think it's really important that there's an acknowledgement. That's one of the things that we can do with unconditional love, is actually make an acknowledgement that you see this other person, that they're not invisible, and that you appreciate them. It does so much to boost a person's self-confidence and even their self-love, just to have that acknowledgement that somebody else actually sees them. And I think very important.
True. Well, that was a pretty interesting conversation. Is there anything else that you want to say or share, or anything you hope I asked that I didn't? That's our famous last question we asked, right?
Oh, it does so much to boost. No.
Show us your crystal that you showed me there before.
Oh, okay. Well, as you know, hubby and I, we own a dog boarding kennel, and so we work every day. So when we actually get time to take a break, we like to go over to Arkansas, and we like to go into the crystal mines and dig crystals. So he just finished cleaning a beautiful specimen here.
That's gorgeous.
Just today, and so I don't know if you can see that very well, but a lot of the points are really clear, really pretty. So this is my fun, to go into the middle of the forest where there's nobody around and dig a mine all day in the dirt.
You can only do that every day, and it pays your bills, right?
Oh, exactly.
Well, thank you so much for spending the last hour and whatnot with me, and it was just fun. It's just fun to talk about things and just see where it goes. And if I have anything to kind of summarize connection to higher self or the value of meditation, I've learned more about my own spirituality
Exactly.
through that exploration. Well, thank you so much. And using that ability to kind of travel anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I have learned in any book or in any classroom or in any other institution that I've been in.
Exactly. I have taken so many classes trying to find information, and it always seemed like, oh, if I just take this next class, I'll be able to do it. That was never what was meant to happen. I was meant to meditate and find out my story myself. And the same as for you. You have a story, and nobody else can tell you your story, you know, and yours isn't going to look like mine. But what's really amazing is that we have access to it through a simple way of just meditating. And it doesn't, meditation can look so much different for one person to the next. It's just listening to a different aspect of yourself communicate to you and ask questions.
Very true.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's the end of our show. We'll have this available for replay afterwards. If you want to listen to it again, or if you want to share it on Facebook, it will be available out there for the foreseeable future. We'll keep doing this on Friday nights. Tonight's connection was much better than it was last week, which was really blurry and choppy. And we had so much fun. We had such a good conversation. We might have to redo that one. But next week, we're going to be talking to Tammy Fife. She is a paranormal investigator that lives in Jacksonville, Florida. She's worked with all kinds of interesting people. So we're going to be talking all about the paranormal and things that go bump in the night, clear up a lot of the misconceptions, and maybe definitely share some stories. So if anybody's interested in that, and then we're going to be talking about Ayurvedic health, I think the week after that with Heather Wilson, which is a lot about, not only organic foods, but what's happening inside of our body and how we can tolerate these things. So I think there's lots of interesting stuff coming down the pike, but we're going to be talking all about I want to say thank you for your evening and have fun.
Thank you. Bye.
If anybody's interested in that, and then we're going to be talking about Ayurvedic health, I think the week after that with Heather Wilson, which is a lot about, not only